Shalom, everybody. Welcome back. Visit Hashem Chodesh Tov also. We're now into the month of Cheshvan. We have insights in the Parshat of Lech Lecha, but we want to give some type of a prologue. Rebbe Nachman once said, and it's quoted in his book, Rebbe Nachman's Wisdom, Sichot Haran, that with every single lesson that he revealed, you can go with it through the entire Tanakh, the entire Talmud, Zohar, Midrash, the Old Torah, and the written Torah entirely. In other words, of the concepts that Rebbe Nachman brings in a lesson, you can find them hinted in every area of the Torah. That's how far-reaching Rebbe Nachman's teachings are. And it's in this vein that we are trying very hard these past few years to connect as much as we can the Parshas of the week with one specific lesson Likutey Moharan, lesson 24, just to show how far-reaching Rebbe Nachman's teachings are and how you can find them everywhere. And by doing so, to see the unbelievable level of divine inspiration, Ruach HaKodesh, found in his teachings, and to show you how down-to-earth and real they are, and how they can be applied B'ezrat Hashem. With that in mind, we just want to recap again certain ideas from Likutey Moharan lesson 24. You may have heard them over in the past, but every time there's a new insight in them. And after this intro, we will now show you how they're hinted to in the Parsha of the week. So, Rebbe Nachman teaches in lesson 24 that doing mitzvot with joy is so powerful, is so important, is so necessary in order to bring the whole creation to its perfection, to its goal, to the tachlit. You can do mitzvot, very like lethargy, very sad, very negative. Okay, it's still a mitzvah, but it doesn't have that capacity and power as when a person does a mitzvah with joy. The mitzvah with joy, like there's many verses talking about doing mitzvah with joy. The classic one is Ivdu et Hashem simcha, from King David, from Psalms, to serve Hashem with joy. Okay, Hashem wants us to serve Him with joy. It's a command. It's a mitzvah in itself, and because of that, it's so important, and it has that thrust. So Rebbe Nachman teaches when a Jew does a mitzvah with joy, the mitzvah that he does with joy then gains momentum, and the momentum, it's like molecules. When one molecule starts shaking, it starts shaking all the molecules. So too, one mitzvah done with joy has repercussions and wave effects, rippled effects on its surroundings. Surrounding meaning other people, other mitzvot, the world at large, all dimensions. A mitzvah that a Jew does with joy is far-reaching. Don't think the mitzvah you do is only for you. When you do a mitzvah with joy, it has major repercussions and it has a product. It produces. It has an after effect. It spreads. Okay, it's like reproduction in a sense. And when this happens, Rebbe Nachman teaches there, the person then has the ability that this mitzvah done with joy can activate blessings upon himself and the entire world. Okay? The main blessing Rebbe Nachman teaches is the blessing of knowledge, the blessing of intellect. Because the greatest gift of all is to know Hashem, to know more and more about Hashem. It's like, again, the famous King Solomon scenario, that Hashem offered King Solomon any request he wants. Wealth, riches, honor, anything. King Solomon said, I want knowledge of you. And Hashem says, because you asked for that knowledge, I'll give you automatically all the wealth and everything that you didn't ask for. Because the greatest blessing in the world is knowledge of Hashem. When you have this knowledge of Hashem, everything is amazing. Everything is complete in a sense. You don't feel like you're lacking. Like it says, Da'at kanita. It's a Gemara and it's a Mishnah. Da'at kanita ma chasarta. Da'at chasarta ma kanita. If you've acquired knowledge, then what are you lacking? And if you lack knowledge, then what have you acquired? Meaning, knowledge is of Hashem, awareness of godliness is the greatest blessing. So, however, Rebbe Nachman teaches there that with this blessing, you have to join it with emunah. Meaning that as much as you know, the purpose, the gateway of knowledge is in order to realize how much you don't know. Tachlit hayediyah asher lo neda. The goal of knowledge is to know how much you don't know. We're learning Torah. We're learning more about Hashem in order to strengthen our realization how much we don't know, and automatically this strengthens our emunah. So he teaches Rebbe Nachman that with the blessing of knowledge, you have to join it with emunah. When you do this, when you join emunah with knowledge, which is a scenario that you're learning in order to realize how much more you don't know, and then automatically your emunah strengthened, this accesses the highest level in our interface with connection with Hashem, which is called the Keter. The Keter is the gateway to Hashem's infinite light. This infinite light, on practical terminology, affords a person clarity in his challenges and struggles in trying to be a good Jew, in trying to fulfill his purpose, his tikkun, that he came to this world, reincarnated again and again and again, to finally fulfill his mission. Infinite light fills a person with the direction and the light needed in the darkness of this world, where to go to make the right decisions in life and to find the right solutions for all the challenges. That's basically the goal. So Rebbe Nachman teaches all this starts with being besimcha. Being besimcha and taking that simcha and putting it in mitzvah performance. Being a happy person with whatever it takes and using that joy then in the energy of, transmitted into the energy of doing a mitzvah. This now causes the whole domino effect of momentum that we mentioned, leading up to the Keter. With all this in mind, now we can understand better the opening piece of this week's Parsha. Hashem tells Avraham Avinu, Lech Lecha. Okay? Lech Lecha. Let's read inside the verse. It's much better. Vayomer Hashem, this is chapter 12, verse 1, opening of the Parsha. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetecha u'mibeit avicha el ha'aretz asher areka. And Hashem said to Avraham, he's not yet Avraham, he's Avraham still, Lech Lecha, go for your sake. Rashi points out, for your own benefit and for your own goodness. Hashem is telling him to go for his own goodness. Me'artzecha, from your land. Mimoladetecha, from the place that you are born. Umibeit avicha, and from your father's house. And where to go? El ha'aretz asher areka, to the land, the holy land, in which I will show you. The next verse, ve'escha, there's 3 blessings here, or 4 really. Ve'escha legoy gadol, and by doing so, this is verse 2. And by doing so, and I will make of you escha legoy gadol, into a great, large nation. Va'avarechecha, and I will bless you. Va'gadele shemecha, and I will make bigger your name. Ve'yeh bracha, and then you yourself will be the source of the blessing. Okay? So let's take a look. Rebbe Nachman talks about doing a mitzvah of joy, and then the mitzvah begins to walk. To gain momentum, he uses the term halicha, walking. Hashem tells Avraham Avinu, Lech Lecha. Hashem's giving Avraham Avinu a mitzvah. What's his mitzvah? You have to go to the land. So automatically, Hashem is telling Avram, this is your first mitzvah. I want you to go. Hashem is commanding, Lech Lecha. So Hashem is telling Avraham Avinu, he's hinting to him, I want you to do this mitzvah, and it has to be with joy. And where is this mitzvah of joy going to take you to? To Lecha. Lech, go, and a second time Lecha. Lecha translates as go to yourself. But in Gematria, the numerical value of Lecha, Lamed is 30, Chaf is 20, that's 50. 50 in Kabbalistic terminology refers to the 50th gate, the 50th level, which is another term for the Keter. The Keter is called level 50, which, like we said, is the gateway, the interface between us and Hashem's infinite light. That's where we have to get to. So Hashem's telling Avraham Avinu, Lech, I'm commanding you to do a mitzvah with joy, so that the mitzvah can have momentum. Lech and hazalicha. So I'm telling you to go, and the mitzvah itself is to go. That's already amazing. Hashem's telling him go, and it's a mitzvah. So the mitzvah to go, which is anyways done through simcha, that's the command itself. Do the mitzvah of joy, and it's what is the mitzvah to go? And by doing so, this mitzvah is actually gaining momentum to where? To get to the Keter. Lech Lecha. The goal of the mitzvah of joy in gaining its momentum is to eventually reach the level 50, okay? But it's on conditions. Conditions is what? That it's done, like we said, besimcha. So amazingly, the pasuk, Hashem is telling Avraham Avinu, in order to do the mitzvah with joy so that it reaches the Keter, you have to leave 3 sections of sadness and depression. There are 3 terms, 3 sections of the same idea. You have what's called depression, sadness. You have what's called, that's in Hebrew, atzvut. Then you have in Hebrew, it's called mara shchora, which is translated as melancholy. Literally, it's the black bile, that when a person has depression, so the body emits a black bile. There's 4 biles in the body, the Rambam teaches. The black one is very dangerous. That's what causes sicknesses and maladies and imbalance in the person's system. And depression activates the black bile. That's melancholy. And the 3rd section is called the da'agot, worries. Because all 3, they work together. They're parts, sections, but they work together. The worry, the depression, the sadness and depression, atzvut, melancholy, and worries. 3 levels which are super dangerous. Hashem is telling Avraham Avinu that in order to do the mitzvah besimcha, in order to reach Lecha, 50, the 50th gate, the 50th level, the Keter, you have to leave. You have to leave sadness, depression, melancholy, and worries altogether. So Hashem is telling him, you have to leave, you have to walk and leave the depression. So me'artzecha, your land, your moladetecha, your birthplace, how you were born, your birth. The moladetecha, we're going to see, it has many connotations. Mebeit avicha, the house of your father. What's going on here? In sadness, depression, melancholy, and worries, there are 3 ways they bring down a person. Artzecha, which translates as the land, also refers to artsiyut, the heaviness of the gravitational pull of the earth. The sadness and depression is when a person is just feeling down and sad, and he doesn't even know why sometimes. He's just feeling heavy and down, and he blames where he's born, his upbringing, etc. So the artsiyut, the physicality of living in this world, makes a person feel heavy and down. Artsiyut is like heavy gravitational heaviness. And depression and sadness, which makes a person tired and not wanting to get out of bed, that's associated more of the term of artzecha, that a person is artsiyut, has too much earth. In other words, he's being weighed down by the heaviness of his physical existence and not being able to lift out of it. For whatever reason, it's not external, internal, it's just there. It has to be dealt with. So artsiyut, artzecha, Hashem's telling Avraham Avinu, you have to leave the sadness and depression, which is rooted in artsiyut, the heaviness of just being heavy and down and negative and sad. For whatever reason, you have to get out of that. There's no mitzvah to be like that, and you have to work on getting out of that. Number 1, you have to run away from that. You have to leave that. That's Hashem's command. I want you to walk, to go to the Holy Land, which is the place of simcha, and you have to leave the artzecha, where you're coming from the diaspora. You're coming from a place where there was heaviness and sadness and depression. You have to leave there in order to come to blessings, to come to the Keter. Okay? Umi moladetecha. Moladetecha means birthplace, but also means the conception. Conception meaning the sexuality, the drive, the sexual drive of having that desire. In normal circumstances, people who have the lust for sexuality is because they feel, like all other lusts, they feel something's missing. They need the sexual pleasure to try to fill in the void. It doesn't, obviously. Person feels even more empty after succumbing to sexual pleasure, illicit immorality, etc. But the feeling is a person feels empty and something outside has to fill him in. Normally, again, most people who go into brothels and fall into sexuality, sexual impurity, and all the wrong types of desires in that area, is because they feel empty. They feel that something outside has to fill them in, and this is related to the melancholy, the black bile, that a person feels he's missing something inside. The artziut is you're just heavy, you're just down. You don't know why. So you don't not necessarily feeling that you're missing something. You don't want to eat. You don't want to. You just feel empty. You feel down and heavy. That's the idea of sadness and depression. That's artzecha. Moladetecha is that a person has a drive for wrong lusts and desires because he feels he's missing something. He's empty, and that's the idea of the black bile coming out to try to fill in the gap in a person. That's the idea of the melancholy. So Hashem's telling Avraham Avinu, even the second category of melancholy, you have to leave, okay? In order to reach the Keter, in order to do Lech Lecha, so you have to leave sadness, depression, artzecha. Second, moladetecha, the sexual lust and desires, which automatically include other other desires, because everything's like Rebbe Nachman teaches in many places. The main lust is the lust for sexuality. Everything's underneath that, food and money, etc. All under that. Okay, umibeit avicha is now also not where a person is trying to fill himself in, but the scenario is making him feel worried that he's lacking. Beit avicha, the house. Okay, I'm in a house, my parents' house, and we're missing food, we're missing electricity, we're missing this. A person is, how are we going to pay the bills? How are we going to do this? Beit avicha means, okay, so how am I going to make my ends meet? And I'm worried now. I'm beginning to worry, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And worry is also a type of sadness and depression. The person's worried, how am I going to meet up to this? Like it's outside of my control. It's like a worry that something, it's not like I'm missing something, but I have to fulfill something outside of myself to make the house running. The Beit Avicha, the house of my father, is now, I'm in a surrounding, and we have to make sure that we make ends meet in order to survive. And worry is, oh my God, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to do this? That's a worry that also leads to sadness. And Hashem is telling Avraham Avinu, you got to leave all three categories: the sadness, depression, the melancholy, and the worries. You got to get out of that in order to reach Lecha, the 50th level, the Keter. You got to leave that. So let's go on. The land, because the land, Eretz Yisrael, is the place of simcha. There's many verses. Rav Nosson brings many verses showing that Eretz Yisrael is the land of simcha. Okay, we get tons of verses from Tehillim, how it's so associated with the concept of joy in the Holy Land. So he's saying that's where you have to go in order now. You have to run from these three levels of depression: sadness, depression, melancholy, worry, and come to Eretz Yisrael, where is the place of joy. Now, the worry is that while traveling, and when you're traveling, you're not in your place yet, and you're more prone to fall. So Avraham Avinu would be worried, but traveling, the Gemara says, the Midrash says, Rashi breaks this down, that when a person travels, let's look inside, right? Rashi says, it's a nice Rashi on the second verse. The second verse in the Parsha, like we read earlier, Hashem promises, I'll make you to a big nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name bigger. So Rashi points out like this: since traveling causes the following three items. Number one, a person now while traveling, he can't have relations. A person's not allowed to have relations. If he's a guest in somebody's house, he can't have relations with his wife, let's say, while traveling. And also, the person with traveling, they're not so healthy. They're a bit sick. They're not feeling well. The lack of sleep, the change of schedule. So because of that, it diminishes being fruitful and multiplying, the actual mitzvah of reproducing. It doesn't produce when you're traveling. Number two, mema'etet tamamon. You have all these expenses while traveling, so the money is diminished. And number three, mema'etet et Hashem. It diminishes the name. What does it mean diminishes the name? A person's honor when you're traveling, so you're not honorable because you're all messed up and you're all sleepy and you're groggy. So your honor of your name is diminished because you look very submitted while traveling. You're not yourself. You have to really get back into your schedule and your home place and your little corner in order to be yourself again. So Avraham Avinu was worried of losing these three, so Hashem had to promise him, you will not lose these three at all. Okay? Lekach huzkak l'shalosh brachot alalu. That's why Avraham Avinu needed these three blessings. Sheivticho al habanim v'al hamamon v'al Hashem. That Hashem promised him on offspring, on money, and on his name. In our context, we said that when the mitzvah gains momentum, it begins to have products. It begins to, like the molecules, it begins to influence other people, other mitzvot, the world. The world is influenced by your mitzvah when you do it b'simcha. So in a sense, the idea that the mitzvah produces, so this is the first blessing. The first stage after doing a mitzvah with joy is that it gains momentum and it produces, it gets the whole world to wake up. Rebbe Nachman teaches there, lesson 24. So that's the idea of ve'escha legoy gadol, through you doing the mitzvah, the asiyah of the mitzvah, doing it with joy. So escha, through you're doing the mitzvah with joy, legoy gadol, I'll get you that you'll be a big nation, meaning many people will begin to follow you, follow suit, and also serving Hashem with joy, thanks to you. Thanks to you doing the mitzvah of joy. So that's the first one of having, like as if to say, children, being fruitful and multiplying, that your mitzvah of joy makes a produce. There's a result. Number two, avarechecha, like we said, the bracha. You activate bracha. It's true, the main bracha is the bracha of intellect. However, Rav Nosson points out that by tzaddikim, the tzaddikim, everything in their life, even physicality, is a gateway for them to perceive Hashem. When a tzaddik eats, when he has money and he has a house and he has, if you want to say, riches, for the tzaddikim, Rebbe Nachman teaches this in lesson 60, for example, that tzaddikim, in order to have deep perception of godliness, they need ashirut, they need kol hon de alma, all the wealth of the world, because there's certain perceptions of God that can only be perceived by wealth, because like Rebbe Nachman teaches another lesson, lesson 68, 69, the source of money is very, very, very high. That's why wealthy people have a lot of honor. Hon Yosif Re'im Raibim, because the person who has wealth is connected to the source of the money itself also, which is very, very lofty. And like Rebbe Nachman quotes the Gemara that Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yudan Nasi, author of the Mishnah, Haya mechabed ashirim, he would honor very much wealthy people, even if they weren't such Torah scholars, because the fact that they have access to wealth means they also access the source of the wealth, which is a very supernal high level, that when accessed, can open up a person's mind to the deep perceptions of the Torah. Okay? So by tzaddikim, even their money is birkat hasechel, is the blessing of the intellect. So in our context, that Hashem tells Avraham Avinu, and I'll give you a bracha, the bracha being also the bracha of the intellect, even though it's mammon, but really by tzaddikim, the blessing for money, like we saw by King Solomon. Hashem told him, you want the blessing to know me, so I'll automatically give you wealth. Why couldn't Hashem say that Shlomo Melech, okay, I'll just give you the blessing of knowing me, but I won't give you the other blessings? No. Once you ask for the blessing of intellect, then everything in life becomes an avenue to perceive Hashem by the tzaddikim. If it's the food they eat, the pineapple, the banana, the nice car, the sofa, the comfortable bed, by them, what they're experiencing, because these are real tzaddikim, it's a way for them to connect to divine high perceptions of godliness. So everything for them is considered the bracha of the intellect. And then finally, agadela shemecha, I'll make your name greater. Because like we say, when a person's traveling, he loses the honor of his name. Honor and name and emunah are all interrelated, okay? The idea of Hashem, we say every day in Shema, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Blessed is the name of your honor of Hashem, Malchuto, and your kingship forever and ever. So we say Shem Kevod Malchuto. The name of the honor, name and honor are synonymous. Rebbe Nachman goes on into this a lot. The idea of honor is a garment. Rabbi Yochanan kara lemane mechabduta. Rabbi Yochanan would call his clothing his honorable ones, because the clothing of a person honors the person. You see, when you have a general, he wears honorable clothing. A rabbi, he has to dress matching his rabbinical status. A king, you can't just walk around like that. Okay, King Charles, he can dress how he wants. But I'm just saying, in normal, a king has to have the disposition of honor reflected in the garments. The garments show who the person is, because it's covering up. It's like a shell, but really revealing the honor of the person hidden behind it. So by Hashem, we have what in the Torah, what's called ananei kavod, the clouds of glory, which is surrounding the encampment of the Jewish people. Also surrounding Har Sinai, when Moshe Rabbeinu went into the mount, the cloud, Choshech, Anan, V'Arafel, he went into the 3 levels of the clouds in order to receive the Torah, and became totally hidden. So the idea of a cloud and a garment both cover up, and they conceal what's beyond it. All you can do is to believe what's beyond the garment and the cloud. And belief, in other words, a general, he's wearing clothing, and you trust the clothing reflects who he really is. Not ideally, like a Rav, a king, the clothing is to show you that you should trust and believe that the person wearing the clothing has that status. You don't see it, you don't see him in action yet, but you have to. The clothing will show you that you must trust and believe that beyond the clothing there is the status of the garment being reflected. So the idea of Hashem, which represents honor, also represents emunah, because emunah is that. Emunah is you have to believe what you can't see. The garment is covering up what's beyond it. It's like it's telling you a message, but you don't see it. You have to believe that it's beyond it. So that's the idea of Agadala Shemecha, is the state, the status, the level of having the emunah activated. And then finally the pasuk says Veheye bracha, and then you will be a bracha. Heye bracha means you'll be a source of blessing. What's going on? What's this 4th piece in the 2nd verse? All this is while Avram is still Avram. The Hey was not yet put into his name. The Hey of Avraham, Rav Nosson points out, refers to the 5 voices of simcha. Kol sason, v'kol simcha, kol chatan, v'kol kala, kol omrim hodu l'Hashem ki tov, ki l'olam chasdo. Rav Nosson says there's 5 voices of joy. We mentioned them in the Sheva Brachot. It's a verse. It's a verse in, I think it's in Isaiah or Yirmiyahu. The list of 5 levels of sounds of joy, and that's the Hey of Avraham. It's funny because when a person laughs, they say ha 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 ha. When you say ha, you write ha. It's the letter Hey. Ha ha. It's the letter Hey. It's interesting. So Avraham, he was not yet there. He's going to become Avraham. So it says Veheye bracha. This is the prerequisite to eventually become that the 5 ways, the 5 levels of joy become internalized and a part of you, and you become Avraham. So whenever any Jew who represents Avraham represents also every Jew trying to seek out Hashem, you have to make your first initiative when you're not happy, when you're, God forbid, trapped in sadness and depression and melancholy and worries. You got to make the first move to get out. Once you succeed and you do Lech Lecha, reach the Keter, the gift of the Keter is you get Heye bracha. You now become a source of blessing where the Hey becomes a part of you. The Hey is the 5 voices of the simcha b'ezrat Hashem. So we showed in a nutshell how this lesson 24 is amazingly alluded in the first 2 verses of this parsha. Please hit like on this class. Show us your feedback that you enjoyed these classes, and please share them with others. Shabbat Shalom, and may Rebbe Nachman's teachings truly enhance your Shabbat and the rest of the week and the rest of the month and the rest of the year and the rest of your life. B'ezrat Hashem. And his main teaching, Rebbe Nachman, is always besimcha. Mitzvah gedol aliyot besimcha tamid. Work on being joyous. And this is what we found hinted to in this week's parsha. Shabbat Shalom, and may we all have a true Lech Lecha to go to the 50th level. Shabbat Shalom.